Andy is a tutor and course organizer at the Arthur Finley College in the UK, the world's foremost college for the advancement of the spiritual arts, and his work, both as a demonstrator and tutor of evidential mediumship, has taken him around the world. Andy has been developing his mediumship for 20 years and has a wealth of knowledge, and I happen to know that firsthand. Andy, I know that you started very young. I remember that you started at 18 years old with mediumship. In my mind, that's quite young. Tell us how you got involved in this course of life.
So I think, as a very young lad, there was always an awareness of the spirit world, but you never think of it as being something, well, you normalize it because it's always been part of your life, and you just assume that kind of everyone else has the same types of experience. It wasn't until after I became a medium, but started to consciously develop my mediumship when I was 18, that my mum and dad started to open up a little bit about the type of experiences I had when I was a child that they just never really talked to me about. My dad used to put me to bed when I was 1-2 years of age, and then he'd go downstairs. They would start hearing conversations coming from my bedroom, and then when I would go upstairs to see what was going on, as soon as he put his hand on the doorknob, it would just go completely silent. It'd just be me in bed asleep. So I think really from a very young age, that mediumship was very much on the surface. But I just lived a normal, very working class British life. And then when I was 18, well, 17 actually, I got headhunted by a large multinational accounting company from school. And so I took that job when I was straight out of school. And as part of that job, they gave me options of where I could be located. So at the time, I was seeing a girl in Sheffield, and it was quite a serious relationship, really. You think of it being as a serious relationship when you're 17. And there was the option to go to Edinburgh or to London or Birmingham. And then I saw on the paperwork, it was Sheffield. So I decided to choose Sheffield so I could start this relationship. And my mum and dad had saved all their lives for a college, like a university fund for me. And because I wasn't going to university, they gave me a small deposit, and I bought a house on my 18th birthday. And I set off to Sheffield with this new relationship, a new home. And very quickly, my whole life disintegrated. That relationship, as all first loves do, come to an end. And that kind of put me into a bit of a spiral, really, because I'm not sure if you've ever been to an accounting company before, but they're definitely not 18-year-old people working there. They're all middle-aged men, balding, a little bit like what I look like now, probably. But it was very difficult to make friends at work. I didn't know anyone in Sheffield. I lost my relationship. And my work at the time involved traveling to different places, auditing big multinational companies. So I was in a depression, really. It was very difficult, probably the most difficult time of my life. And just in order to try and do something and meet people, I used to walk aimlessly around the city at night time. I think, looking back, I'm not sure if I was looking for my girlfriend at the time, if I was looking for something, but I knew I was looking for something different. And one evening, I happened upon a line of people coming from this little building, and I thought, well, I just wonder what that's all about. So I stood in the line, and I got through the doors, and they told me it was a Buddhist center and it was a meditation, their open meditation night. So I paid a couple of pounds sterling to go in, and I started to practice meditation. That's how I found meditation. And I did it not because I had a real interest in meditation. I did it just to meet people, and something that I could do in the evenings after work when I was by myself, just to keep me busy. And so I started to practice meditation an hour a day, Monday to Friday. And I used to sit twice a day, Saturday and Sundays, because those days were very long. Being by yourself, it broke the day up for me. And through that, after a good year, 18 months of doing that every day, I started to go on this sort of personal what I look back now and realize was a personal spiritual journey. But I remember then um, uh, one morning, I hadn't told my mum and dad how difficult things were, primarily because they didn't really support my choice of going to Sheffield in the first place. And I got a phone call one morning. By that point, I lost the home, I'd lost my work, my relationship. My work was already been suffering from what I was going through. And I'd moved to this little bedsit in a place called Bachelor Road, which was quite apt for me, I guess, being a young bachelor at the time. And I had a phone call. They told me my grandfather had passed away. Like, my mum rang me up. And that was the point where I broke down at that point then and told them everything that had been going on. And a few days after that, I just woke up one morning and it wasn't a thought, it was a real deep-seated conviction that I knew I could communicate with the spirit world, even though it wasn't a part of my life consciously up till that point. So I just knew that was something I could do. And I didn't do anything for a little while because I told my mum and dad what was going on. I told work what was going on, and we all agreed for me to be transferred back to Birmingham. So I moved back home with mum and dad. But that conviction was still very much present. So I started to investigate, just a bit of research on the internet, and I happened upon a spiritualist church on the internet that was quite local to where I lived. So one Thursday, I just decided to go. On the internet, though, it was advertised as a Sunday service. So I wanted just to see where the church was and how to get there. So one Thursday evening, I just drove over just to check out the place. And a little bit like Sheffield, there was a line of people standing coming out of the door. So I parked the car and I joined the queue again. And this time when I got to the table, they said, "Oh, it's our open circle. Anyone can come. It's from Mediumship Development. Do you want to come?" And I said, "Well, I'm here now." I gave them my £2 again and went in and sat with about, I'd say there was, memory serves me correctly, about 20 people in a circle. And there was the circle leader was called Glynis Owen, if I remember correctly. And she started by asking everyone to sit and meditate. So I did. And afterwards, she came over to me, probably because I was 18 and I'm pretty much a unicorn when it comes to spiritualist churches, an 18-year-old guy there. And it was my first time, of course. And she said, "You sat really well in meditation." So I've been doing that for a couple of years at home. And then she said, "Okay, you're going now to do a contact for us." I said, "A what?" "You're going to communicate with the spirit world." "How do I do that?" She said, "You're just going to do it." So I stood up, had no training at this point. And I remember that was the kind of the turning point really for everything. I remember that contact very well. I don't know, really, in the moment, something happened and I just went to this woman in the circle and said, "Got your nephew, your nephew's passed to the spirit world?" She said, "Yes." I said, "He died in a car accident in a red Ford Fiesta?" She said, "Yes." I said, "He left the road and hit a tree?" "Yes." I said, "Oh, it's his birthday today." She said, "How do you know that?" I said, "At home, you've got a bay window with a table in front of it. And there's a photograph of him and you lit a candle and wished him happy birthday before you came here this evening." And she broke down into tears. And that was my first contact I'd ever given without any training. So that was the beginnings then. That after a few weeks, I started to go to that circle. And then the rest is history. That's where the journey really began for me.
I find that so interesting because it seems like so many new mediums really struggle actually with this concept of making a contact and giving detailed information. There's so much in what you just said that I'd love to pull apart, but what are your feelings about that, about people new to mediumship trying to get a contact and you can see the pain come over them and the distress? What is it you think is the difference between someone who easily stands up and gives a contact? Do you think it's simply that you didn't know enough and perhaps the word would be surrender? Or do you think that there's something in there that we are missing or that people are missing that are new to this?
I think the main difference is, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, is that although that was my first contact, I'd actually been developing my mediumship unknowingly for 2 years before that. For me, I think I came at it from a slightly different way, in that most people, first of all, they perhaps have an inkling, or they might watch TV, they might know someone that does it, they might, in their own way, end up at that place and go to the circles or development because they're interested, first of all.
Yeah.
And what that can then mean is there's two things I think that are important. The first stage of the development, I think, is really you have to do what I did unknowingly, which is you have to look inwardly first. And by spending that time in the silence, in the stillness, in that 2 years I was in Sheffield, and as I mentioned, went on a personal spiritual journey. What that really entailed was having to revisit lots of different things within my own life. And some of those things heal from, other things not healing from, but just really understanding who I am. And by going through that journey, what you essentially do is you're peeling back the layers emotionally. First of all, you're understanding your emotions, you're understanding who you are. You're actually building a very open and honest relationship with yourself. That's the key. It's not, sometimes people have these, they do their work, their personal development work, and emotions come, but they're not truly honest with themselves as to why those emotions are there. Perhaps they try to deflect blame somewhere else, or don't take responsibility for their actions. What I did was really to be really honest with myself. And what that then did is it really allowed my emotions to come to the surface and for me to understand what I was feeling, which then gave me a language, because the language of the mediumship is really an emotional language of being able to really express in words and articulate particular emotions and sensings that we're becoming aware of. And secondly, I actually allowed the mediumship to come to the surface by getting to know myself, peeling back those layers, those different layers of who I am. That moment when I woke up that one morning with that conviction that I could be a medium, or I was a medium, I should say. That was the moment that my mediumship came to the surface, that I was actually had an awakening, if you like, or very much an understanding of that mediumistic potential that was in me. And so I walked into that development circle that first time, not really questioning if I was a medium or not. I already knew I was. No one could take that away from me, because it was not just a thought. Like I said, it was a deep-seated conviction. It was a knowingness, because I'd experienced that reality of the mediumship within me through that meditation practice that I was partaking in. And so all the ingredients, I think, were there from the beginning. I'd already built a relationship with myself. I'd already built unknowingly a relationship with that power of the spirit world through that meditation practice. I think as well, being 18, you are a bit fearless at that age. That knowingness that I had meant that I didn't really question or challenge the experiences that I was having. I just allowed myself to express and trusted. That became natural because of the work that I'd been doing previously with the meditation. And I think that's the main thing. I think one thing that really hinders students, and I think this is the first step, is them having to really accept that they are a medium. If you think about it, if you're walking into a sort of mediumistic experience, still not sure if you're a medium or not, then rather than being able to surrender, you're actually having this sort of internal fight with yourself, trying to prove something to yourself, which causes a tension within and stops the mediumship from being able to flourish naturally. So what you'll find, of course, is that usually people don't move into their mediumship through that kind of similar journey that I had. Usually they start working with the mediumship before they've undertaken that personal spiritual journey. And so what we're trying to do often as teachers of mediumship is bringing the mediumship out, bringing it to the surface while they're practicing trying to communicate with the spirit world. So that causes all sorts of conflict then and difficulties. And I think it's usually why, like, you can't give a time span to anyone's development, but usually 2 or 3 years from the beginnings, people start to have these big breakthroughs, because hopefully by that point, they've been engaging within their own personal development and have done the work that's needed to accept they are a medium, to build that understanding of their own emotions and to develop that relationship with the spirit world. So I don't think it's because I was anything special. I think it's just the way in which I approached. And it was very much by chance, really. It wasn't like a conscious thing that I did it. It was just the way that life unfolded for me and brought me to mediumship. I just did all the work needed before I started with the mediumship. And the one other point, of course, is that sometimes people choose what expression they want to engage with the spirit world. I want to be a healer, I want to do trance mediumship, I want to do evidential mediumship. It's a little bit like putting the cart before the horse. Because what we're doing is we're choosing, or quite often people are choosing what they feel interested in, and then are trying to develop that. Whereas the best way to do things, and the way it should be done really, is first of all looking within, seeing what spiritual gift is present and needs to be expressed, and then allowing that power of you to inspire you, along with the spirit world, to inspire you to determine what expression you should be developing and engaging in. So not everyone is going to start off by developing evidential mediumship. Some people are going to naturally be healers to begin with. And as they unfold their healing quality, the evidential mediumship then will come to the surface later on. For me, I started with evidential mediumship because that's where I was called to from within. And if at 18 you told me, and you're going to become a healer or engage in healing, I'd have laughed at you. I didn't have any interest in healing when I was 18. For me, it was about the evidence of survival that was the calling. But after about 10 years of developing that evidential mediumship, that healing quality naturally came to the surface and was then ready to be developed. I do really very much believe that the true medium has all the gifts of the spirit there. The trance mediumship, the physical mediumship, healing, can be the evidential mediumship, inspirational speaking. But we have to, what's the first gift that's there? Like, what is it that you need to start with? Looking within, discovering that quality, then developing that. Then over a period of time, the other qualities then will naturally come to the surface at the right time for the medium. And then we follow that journey to develop in a rounded way all the gifts of the spirit that are there. And finally, of course, it has to be the right time for the spirit world as well. People often overlook that point. For me, I think at 18, it was the right time for me, but equally was the right time for the spirit world to also develop me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, a lot of students over the years, they say, I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70. I haven't got 50 or 60 years to develop. And sometimes that can be a point of regret, that they wish they developed further earlier on in their life. But ultimately, they might have had families, children that had to be raised before it was the right time for them and the spirit world. It may have been a career, it may have been other experiences that were needed to develop the right qualities within for them to be ready to express the mediumship, or and the right time then for the spirit world to say this particular person has the right qualities and is at the right stage in their development as a human for us to now start engaging with them in a serious way for their mediumistic development. So it's quite a complex, can be quite a complex journey and lots of ingredients that means it's the right time and also what gift needs to be developed.
Yeah, I think that's true. It seems to me that most people come to mediumship through some sort of pain, to be honest. Some pretty profound experience, often death, that brings them here to mediumship. But it also seems to me that your approach, and I've read this through your website, is the self-development of the medium. That is so essential and often so overlooked, also in my experience, especially now that we've got so many people on television that are doing mediumship, and we have this concept of what mediumship is, that people want to come in, get the tools, the tips and the tricks, and go off and hang the sign and say, now we are television ready. What are your thoughts on that
Well,
approach?
first thing, the first thing is just to pick up on your point about people going through difficult periods of time like I did, and it can be death, it can be a loss of any type of bereavement, a loss of a job, a loss of a home, a loss of a relationship or whatever. These are often natural points within our lives where we begin to question who we are, what we are. And so I don't necessarily think it has to be through those types of experiences. These are often catalysts, these experiences are often catalysts for us to start to look within and to reassess who we are as people, which then starts that natural journey of the spiritual unfoldment for people. For me, what is the main quality of the medium, or fundamental quality, is definitely the quality of service. If the person is willing and there's a calling from within to serve God, to serve the spirit world, to serve humanity in a broader way, has to be the foundation of the whole development. And so intention of why we're beginning that journey is fundamental. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that the spirit world won't work with people as a medium if service isn't their overriding intention, because they'll take the opportunity. But what I think happens is it's not that the medium, the spirit world moves away from the medium when that intention isn't right. It's that the intention isn't there in the beginning to allow the medium to move their awareness to the degree needed to actually develop that relationship. And the intention isn't there in the right way to develop that relationship. What a lot of people don't realize is, and this is what you have to remember in my own experience of mediumship, for at least 15 years, I was traveling the length and breadth of the UK serving spiritualist churches, which is essentially a lot of driving. I sometimes would drive 5 hours to do a 1.5 hour service to drive back 5 hours again. And the only sort of remuneration that you would get is your travel expenses and a cup of tea at the end of your service. There was nothing there was no material gain from any of those types of demonstrations of mediumship. I did it because I was really passionate about doing it. There was just, for me, there's always been a joy of just expressing from the spirit world. And that was the addictive thing. It was an addiction. It has always been the biggest addiction of my life. It's something, that joy that you feel just doing the work and expressing is what keeps me within my expression. I've seen over the last 20 years of being involved with mediumship, I've seen many people come and go, many people claiming the next big thing to be on TV. There's no longevity there often because the intention isn't there to serve.
Mm.
And so not fulfilling, and it's not fulfilling because it's not truly the right time for them, or perhaps the spirit world too, but there's also not that that kind of conviction of wanting to serve and spread that message of the Spirit. And media is a very difficult thing. It's full of ups and downs. It's also very challenging emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And if you want to dedicate your life to the expression, it does involve a lot of sacrifice. And so if an individual hasn't got that quality of service, but also the calling to serve that we have found and discovered within themselves, they aren't going to have what it takes to really be able to do the job on behalf of the spirit world and in the way that it needs to be done. And I think that can often be why you have people that come and go within the mediumistic expression. It's not that they're not good people or not being authentic. It's just that it's not the right moment for them to dedicate their life in that way to that particular expression.
Yeah, it does seem like there's so many people that come and go within mediumship just in the short amount of time that I've been with mediumship. I would have to say maybe 1% of the people that I started with are still doing it. And I think there's a misconception on some level, and I think you're speaking to this point, that it's easy. I have to say mediumship is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, really.
What we also have to recognize is that not everybody that enters into mediumistic development is doing so to become a medium. They
Mm,
might start off with tension, but that isn't the reason why they're there.
mm,
I think I've met I've met hundreds of people, if not thousands of people over the last 20 years that start out developing their mediumship, but really what they're looking for is a outlet for their own spiritual exploration of themselves.
mm,
And a lot of the time, my job as a tutor isn't, my aim overall is to develop very strong demonstrating and private sitting mediums for the spirit world. That's my aim. But I work with lots of people that I know when I begin to work with them, that isn't going to be where they end up.
mm.
But
Interesting.
by engaging with mediumship, by engaging with these different spiritual practices that are all part of the development of mediumship, things like prayer, things like meditation practice, self-reflection, contemplation, so on and so forth. People are actually going to go on their own personal spiritual journey, start to look within themselves and explore and discover what their true talents and potentials are. I've
Mm,
had lots over the years that may have started off wanting or having the intention of developing their mediumship, but have ended up becoming writers. I've got one student that's now a published children's author, nurses, the doctors, business people. They find their way through the development of the mediumship. But the end result is something very different from mediumship itself. And that isn't a bad thing. What is the kind of the greater message of mediumship? The job of the medium is definitely not to prove the existence of the spirit world. No, that isn't the job. I can guarantee all of your listeners two things in life, which is they're always going to have to pay taxes. And the second thing, they're going to die one. I think, I can't remember which president now said that, but death and taxes is definitely a universal truth. So we're all going to die one day. We're all going to know for ourselves if the spirit world exists or it doesn't exist. We're all going to experience that. So it seems quite redundant for the last 150 years of mediums trying to prove that this spirit world exists, because everyone is going to know for themselves if that's true or not at some point in their life. The true message of the mediumship is to be a catalyst for change within the individual. If I'm able to give you a communication from your loved one, and that communication starts to make you question the reality of survival, that is, that those people have survived physical death, it points within the individual to this immortal aspect of themselves, what we would call the spiritual aspect. Well, if you know that your loved one has survived and they've got this immortal part to them that we call the soul, it forces us as individuals who are still here in this world to start to question what is the reality of that aspect of ourselves? Who am I? What is the purpose of my life? And so on. And so what we're trying to achieve through the mediumship is to get people to start to question and explore their own spiritual reality.
Mm.
And I very much believe that each one of us, when we're born into the world, we're all born with certain innate gifts and talents. You only have to look at people like Mozart, for instance, who at the age of 3 was able to not only play piano to a high standard, but was also composing rudimentary compositions of music. It's obvious that at 3 years of age, you're not going to be able to be taught that. That was just a gift. That was his own innate spiritual gift that was very much on the surface and active right from the very first day of his life. Mozart has those innate qualities. We all do. We all have a particular way of serving the world, and every expression in the world, whether that is, cleaning the streets, cleaning toilets in the public bathroom, being a teacher, being a mom or a dad, every expression has the potential to serve and improve the lives of others in some way. So if someone said to me, Andy, what is the meaning of life? I think it's very simple. You have to look within yourself, discover what your innate gifts and talents are, and then allow them to come to the surface and develop an expression within your life that allows those gifts and qualities to be expressed in the most natural way to you as possible.
Mm.
That, I believe, is what gives us not only a meaningful life, but a life that is satisfying. And so anyone that embarks on that journey, I don't think it matters from which way you find that the beginning of that journey, whether it's through Buddhist meditation, through organized religion, through simple self-reflection, whether it's through circumstance, whether it's through mediumistic development. It doesn't matter which way you find that the beginning of that journey. Once you're on that journey, the journey is going to take you where you need to be. And so I don't think that, for me, you might have listeners out there that are not necessarily wanting to develop mediumship, but just wanting to explore a relationship with the spirit world, or just to explore that spirituality of themselves. Mediumistic development is definitely one way of beginning that exploration, which may not lead us to being a medium in the sort of stereotypical way of doing demonstrations for people of mediumship or private sittings or being an inspired speaker. It's still not wasted time, because it will help people to find what their true calling is in life, which will give them meaning and a much more richer and deeper life than they had if they didn't do it. And that's why I think lots of people come and go.
Yeah,
Because
that's a great point. You must see that all the time, the comings and the goings. I'm sure, like you said, thousands of people. Do you feel like sometimes they leave because it seems like what I've noticed in so many classes, in my experience, that it's the idea within this person that really gets in the way of their mediumship, that they're not good enough, that they're comparing themselves, that they thought that it would be easier, they thought they would be better somehow. And it seems like that also seems to be such a big aspect of what holds people back. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but how does one deal with this? It seems like the biggest thing that mediums are speaking about is their insecurities, actually.
yeah, I think first of all, um, developing mediumship. What is mediumship? Essentially, it's a reflection of you. Your mediumship is a mirror of who you are as a person. What I mean by that is that your strengths as an individual in your every normal expression of life will translate to the strengths of your mediumship. Your weaknesses as a person will translate to your weaknesses as a medium. So when you're developing mediumship, you're in a very vulnerable state, because simply by engaging within the communication, you're actually expressing yourself. through that communication. You're showing people what your strengths and weaknesses are as an individual. So if you're wanting to develop the mediumship, making it solid, providing a really strong foundation, you're forced to look at your weaknesses as not just as a medium, but as a human being. So we're always going to be forced to look at and acknowledge our weaknesses, which is what makes mediumship difficult. But at the same time, what lots of students don't do is they don't celebrate the strengths. So again, what I mentioned to you earlier on in this talk was building an open and honest relationship with the self. Now, we have this real, you even hear tutors talking about there's no room for the ego within mediumship. It's nonsense. Because if you think about it, I've just said, your mediumship is a reflection of you. What is the word ego? It's a Freudian word, which means the self. So mediumship is all about you, the self, but it's about being open and honest with yourself. So when we get scared of, okay, let me clarify something. So there is definitely room for the ego in mediumship in terms of you have to understand the self, which is what the ego really means. There isn't room though for egotism and an inflated sense of the self, but there's not also room for someone that, so when we, as media, I think, or as a spiritual community as a whole, we have this sort of false impression that if an individual says they're good at something, it makes them egotistical. That's not entirely true. If you're good at something and you are good at something and you acknowledge that within yourself, that isn't being egotistical. That's just being truthful. That's just you acknowledging your strength. And I don't think you can't be scared of that. You have to be able to be honest with yourself and say, look, these are my weaknesses, but you equally have to accept these are my strengths. Otherwise, what we end up with is a group of people that just have low self-esteem, that actually always saying to ourselves is we're terrible at this and this and this, never acknowledging the positives. That's just low self-esteem now. If you want to be egotistical, then that would be an inflated sense of the self. We think we are much better than what we are. What I'm advocating is, no, look, it's the middle road. You've got to acknowledge what you're good at, but you've got to be true that you are good at these things and nothing more. This is where we are and this is who we are. We've got to acknowledge that. We've also got to be open to look at where we can improve as humans and develop as people. Once we have a real understanding of who we are as an individual, our strengths and our weaknesses, we're now in a place where we can be taught and we can develop something. Because if you think about it, I'm coming at this now from a point of view of a teacher. If I have a student that thinks they're here, but they're actually here, right? And I've got to be I know it's rustic with the way I'm doing things, but you get the drift of what I'm trying to say. I can't help them because they don't listen. They think they're better than what they are. They know more than what they do, and they don't take on advice. I've got people that are here, but they think they're here. I can't help them either because they haven't got the confidence and the self-belief to actually fulfill and express their potential at that particular moment in time.
Yeah.
And people then that can't take criticism because there's an instability there within themselves because of how they look at themselves, that if you say anything constructive, trying to help them, they become defensive. When you've got a student they're there and they think they're there, they are being honest and open with where they are. They've now got the confidence because they've accepting their strengths and can now move forward, but are also open to their weaknesses and receive constructive feedback well, and will take on board that feedback to develop further. So that's the key. It is quite often is having a very balanced, honest and open relationship with the self. That's the first thing. The second thing is if we talked about this earlier, so I'll just briefly mention it. If a medium hasn't yet got to the point of accepting that they are a medium, then that's what causes a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
They're not going to fully surrender because they haven't got that belief within themselves. And thirdly, what can then also make it difficult for them to cope with the difficulties within the development is just a lack of patience. No, mediumship is not like a degree or a high school diploma or whatever. It's not a set time frame. Like, okay, after a year, you're going to be here. After 2 years, you're going to be here. In 3 years, we're all done. It's something that you can't control in terms of time. It
Mhm.
unfolds at pace. And the way it unfolds, what I found is, and this might seem counterintuitive, but when a student is too intense about their development, it actually hinders the development of helps. So
Yeah.
if you think about everything, usually what you put into it is what you get out of it. So you put more practice, you spend more hours, you get more out. With mediumship, it's not quite that way because when you're too intense, you're not relaxed now.
Yeah.
So you're trying to force the results to happen. You're trying to control your development rather than just actually saying, look, this is where I am now. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm just going to let it take care of itself. So a lot of it is patience. A lot of it is allowing your soul to unfold at its own time and pace, and remembering that the mediumship can't unfold if you don't unfold as a human.
Mhm.
So you're not going to see much improvement in terms of the expression of mediumship. Some years you're going to change as an individual and blossom. And by growing as an individual, that's like plowing the field and planting the field. And then in the following years, the mediumship can now catch up because you've unfolded and grown as a person. So there is this dynamic that's there. And I hope you don't mind me being personal. I remember when I first met you, Kira, I struggled to get you to talk. You remember way back then. And I have to say this on a personal note, over the last sort of 7 years or however long it's been since we met, it's been wonderful to see you blossom as a person.
Yeah.
This process has transformed you as an individual from what I remember Kira being 7 years ago to who you are now. And I'm sure through that transformation of you, the mediumship has then been able to catch up and unfold because you're now got the right qualities within yourself that can support that expression of the mediumship. So there is this sort of this symbiotic relationship between your development and your mediumistic development. Why? Because the mediumship is a reflection of you. And people don't always understand. They want it tomorrow.
Oh,
Right? That,
yeah. They want it yesterday, I think, really. And I really love your point about the intensity that people bring because we do come from this culture very much in America, I think in the UK as well, and likely Canada, where you are, that more is better. So I continue to see students who say, I practice every day, or I have to practice. There's more practice to be done, or they're taking classes from every famous tutor, thinking there's a secret embedded somewhere within this teaching that's going to make them better and faster at it. But the reality, to your point, is it's not necessarily because you're working so hard on mediumship. It's that process of patience and allowing it to unfold. And I just think people don't want to hear that, but we need to overly state it in some way. It's like meditation in a sense. You spoke about meditation, and we might be able to touch on that a little bit as well, which is there's a patience. You don't just sit down and fall into deep meditation when you're a beginner. It takes a lot of time before you're able to even sit, or at least I'll use me, for 20 minutes. It's just a practice, and you have to just sit there and allow it to unfold itself. And eventually you get there. But even when you're there, such as mediumship, it's not always on point. Sometimes it doesn't feel great, but you're there anyways. And I feel that mediumship is very much like that. I'd also like to say to the people that are listening, to your point about me, I was the student that could not get any information and just shut down completely when I was asked to give information. You were the person that told me to actually stop and work on my psychic development. And I say that to the people listening because even though at the time it felt, okay, I've been demoted, I really can't do this. I realized through the practice of what you gave me that I could be comfortable and confident in some way. And that allowed me to become the medium. So it's about taking that tension away from yourself. And that's the art, right?
I think this is another point that I think you've got to demystify, is that the psychic ability is not less than the
Yeah.
mediumistic.
Yeah.
It's just, it has a place. When you're working with a demonstration of mediumship, a public demonstration, you can't use the psychic aspect there because the purpose of the demonstration is to provide evidence of the survival of the soul. And the psychic aspect doesn't do that. You know, that has to be, the only way to provide evidence is by working of survival is through mediumistic expression. But in private sittings, particularly, most people that come for a private sitting aren't coming to hear from Aunt Betty. They're coming needing real help and understanding with what they're going through in their own life. And so the psychic level is still soul to soul communication. It's my soul blending with my recipient's soul, understanding what their need is, what's happening within their life that's maybe holding back certain aspects of their expression, or perhaps confirming that certain things that are allowing that expression to be what it needs to be, and helping people to understand what their innate gifts and talents are and how they can fulfill their potential. Now, the psychic level, the way that the psychic level works in terms of how you become aware of the evidence about the recipient, the way you work with those experiences to unfold the story of the recipient's life, is exactly the same as how you work with your mediumship in terms of how it's triggered, how you unfold the information and so on. So quite often it's about, like you've said, working with the psychic level is slightly easier. Well, it's not a lot easier, slightly easier, because your soul is manifesting through the physical body, as is your partner's. So the degree to which you have to move your mind to become aware of that power is slightly less. But what people don't realize is that if you haven't got a very strong foundation on the psychic level, that's what provides the foundation for the mediumistic aspect to actually be there, to work with, as well as giving you some confidence just in your expression. If you can get a few more results quicker, just, and you start to see that actually you're starting to trust your intuition, you're starting to trust the impressions that you have, that builds all the right qualities within a person, that when they then move their mind to the spirit world, which is slightly more difficult because you've just got to move your mind more, to a greater degree than you have on the psychic level, then you've now got the confidence and the language to express your emotions, which you've developed psychically, which now helps on that aspect. When I'm trying new things within my own development, I always start working with them on the psychic level first, for those reasons. It gives me some confidence. I can start to get some results and understanding how it's working. And then when I move it to the mediumistic level, it's not slightly easier, but it gives me a bit of confidence to be able to then work with it with the spirit world. Yeah, I think people don't see the psychic level as being a kind of, or the word psychic as being something less than, inferior to, or a bit of a dirty word, really.
Yeah.
If we don't develop the psychic level properly, I promise you, 80% of the people that come for private sittings are going to leave unhelped. I'll get that across enough. There's no point me talking. If you're going through a divorce, you just, like, imagine my life at 18. I was like the psychic stream. I lost my relationship, just losing my work, lost my job, was in financial array. I lost my grandfather as well, I was going through grief. Now, if I'm No, if I'm going losing my job, lost my car, lost my home, lost my relationship, I need help with those things. And you're now talking to my auntie Betty about her life and what was going on. You can see you're not helping me.
Mm.
What I needed at that age wasn't a mediumistic sitting. I needed help with how am I coping with what life's thrown at me. Where do I go? How do I overcome this? Give me some clarity so I can start working through things to help me and my life. That's a beautiful gift that you can give somebody. And it's just as important as the mediumistic aspect, as I've mentioned. So if any of you out there think that the psychic level is this sort of less than inferior thing, it isn't. For me, in the teachings that I give people, we spend just as much time on the psychic level as we do on the mediumistic level. We need to be very good in both. We just have to appreciate when is the time to work psychically, when is the time to work, and making sure that we know what level we're working on so that we can be transparent and tell the people that we're working with where it's coming from. And of course, in the demonstrations of mediumship, which has always been my forte really, or where the emphasis of my own expression has been, that isn't the place to use the psychic level. But that's not because it's less than, it's just because the psychic level doesn't achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve with the demonstration.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, do you think that mediums are born or made?
I think, like I've said, every single person, when we're born into the world, has their own unique talents and gifts that have been endowed by that greater power that you might call God or the spirit, whatever words you want to use. In that respect, the medium is born with the gift of mediumship. That's something that is and that's why we call it a gift, because it's been endowed naturally by that greater power. Can't manufacture the potential of mediumship in somebody. It has to be there. Now, sometimes that potential of mediumship can be there. We're born with it, but it can be dormant for a particular period of time. For some people, it's dormant for their whole life. That is never awakened.
Mhm.
Uh, and some, as we mentioned earlier on, sometimes can be a passing, a bereavement. It can be a difficult, challenging part of our life where something affects us and can awaken that potential. And sometimes that can even just be becoming a mum or a dad, that something positive that is life changing that can awaken something within us. I do think that every single person in the world can have an awareness. Again, but an awareness, there's going to be some people, we have to be really honest. There's going to be some people that the degree to which they can unfold that awareness is perhaps just having a sense of a presence. Like when you're in a room and you feel you're being watched, that might be all that some people are capable of, is just that awareness in that way. Others, then, it's by degrees. Some people are going to be able to take that awareness and develop it a bit further to be able to have particular, perhaps spiritual experiences. Others can start by doing a communication with friends and families. Others are going to develop it further to be able to do it publicly. Others, I think you're going to have a couple of people or a handful of people in any generation that are going to be the sort of the leading lights for that expression, right? That is the same in every expression in the world, right? Yes, I could probably learn a couple of ballet moves, but I'm not going to become a professional ballerina. It's just not in me. Can probably play Twinkle Little Star on a piano, but I haven't got it in me to become a concert pianist. Again, I might be able to take Twinkle Little Star and develop it to be able to play in front of friends and family or locally. But if you look at the concert pianist, there's something innate within them that you can't replicate. You can't manufacture. When I look at a piano, I see a set of black and white keys and a box. When they look at a piano, they can just play. Mozart. Each one of us has got there's something out there in life where we can just play without having to learn. It's just second nature to us.
Yeah.
Those are the things that normally make us happy and satisfied because now we're actually expressing this true qualities and talents that we have. That's what my mission is really through this work, is to help people discover what their talent is. So they haven't, and wrong. That doesn't mean that, okay, even like with my development, it doesn't mean I'm not going to have hard times. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a struggle or difficult, right? Becoming a concert pianist is difficult. Becoming a ballerina is difficult. Becoming a medium is difficult. Becoming a nurse is difficult. Being a parent is difficult. But what I think is, and this is to quote Nietzsche, the German philosopher, when you have a why, you can cope with almost anyhow. What Nietzsche is saying is that when you find that why in your life, why you're born, what your purpose is, that true purpose, yes, we're going to have to strive to unfold and to perfect and to become what we are potentially able to be. But when we have that why, we can overcome all the hurdles. There's been hundreds, if not thousands of moments in the last 20 years where I've wanted to give up, where it's been very difficult.
Yeah.
I know I've often said it to family and friends, I'm packing it in. I've had enough. It's too hot. I've never really meant the words. There's something within me that could never turn my back on this particular expression, because it's my why. It's my living. It's my purpose in life. So to answer your question, yes, everyone I think everyone has an awareness. There may be some people that awareness is never active within them. So they never have really mediumistic experiences, but the potential for an awareness is still present. But not everybody is going to become a demonstrating medium or a private sitting medium. They might, because it's every other expression. It would be a very boring world if every single person was a concert pianist and every single person was this or that. Some people have got a potential, but not to the degree of developing it that far. And again, some people, this is what makes it difficult. Some people have a world-class potential for mediumship, but never fulfill that potential because they're not willing to dedicate their life to that expression. So it's often what I think causes a lot of angst within students is this, okay, have I got the potential to do that? My advice to everyone is I never started doing mediumship because I wanted to travel the world and demonstrate and become a tutor at the college or anything like that. I started developing my mediumship because I love doing it. There was a joy of doing it. Like I mentioned earlier, that simple joy of doing the work is what sustained me through the last 20 years. The day I lose that joy is the day that I stop expressing myself.
Yeah.
And so I never had this sort of idea of, okay, I'm going to achieve this with my mediumship. I've always been, I'm enjoying it. I'm just going to do it because I enjoy doing it. And then wherever it takes me, it's going to take me. Right. And it's took me in the direction it's took me in. But I've never tried to reach out to create that. If you think my teacher at the beginning of my development, when I got to the point where I was ready to, about 18 months, I think it was, of developing, it was thought that I was ready to start going out publicly demonstrating mediumship. And they wrote letters to 12 churches in Birmingham, asking them to give me a chance. And I think about 3 of those churches responded and gave me a chance. And from those 3 first initial demonstrations to where I am today, I cannot, the last sort of 3 or 4 years has been a bit different, but the first 15 years of my mediumship, every piece of work that I was offered was always invitation only. It was never a case of trying to market myself or having to promote work, or it was always a phone call or an email. Andy, will you come and do this for us? And that wasn't just when I was working in the UK, that all the work, I've worked in lots of different countries around the world, it's always been invitation only. Like I was invited to go. So what I really believe is that when you're doing the right thing for you, you're expressing that natural quality of yourself. And if that's mediumship, and let's just talk about mediumship for a moment. If you're called to be the medium and express it in your life and make it a big part of your life, and it's the right time for the spirit world, the doors just open by themselves and it will take you where it will take you. And I think we've also got to, for me, in the beginnings, as long as I could be of service in some way, whether that was sweeping the floors of the church, making a cup of tea, whatever my purpose was going to be, I was happy just to be part of it, just because my life was taken over by this real joy and love and passion for just expressing and working with the spirit world. So with all the students that I have, I try to encourage within them that it's okay. The only goal that you should have is to be the best medium that you can be, to fulfill your potential. Where the journey takes you in terms of how you're going to express, what places you're going to express, if you're going to travel, if it's going to be a big part of your life, a small part of your life, all immaterial. Let the opportunities take you where they come, and the doors will open if they're meant to be open. If you're there trying to bang down doors and nothing's opening, it's because it's not quite the right time for you. Maybe the spirit world, maybe it's not the right time for both of you, but it's not the right moment for that to happen. And I very much believe in that. And I've spent my whole life trusting in that. There was a period in my life where one year we had a changing of work relationships. I lost overnight, like a third of my schedule. So like 20 weeks of work just disappeared. And I was like, okay, I've got all this time now. What am I going to do? I just thought, well, I'm just going to sit here. It is what it is. Within a week, people that I hadn't heard from for 10, 15 years just picked up the phone. Andy, will you come and do this for me? Oh, Andy, there's this opportunity. Do you want to come out and do this together? And within a week, those 20 weeks of work were filled again. I didn't have to do anything, because I very much believe when you're working for the spirit world and it's the right time and it's the right expression for you, you have to also realize that the spirit world will provide. They want that for them. That it's not you having to make it by yourself. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
Always, you're always led. You've got to let the spirit world inspire. You've got to also realize there's this bigger thing going on outside of your own life, where the spirit would also create opportunities, because they are going to want to put you where you need to be to do the work for them. Right.
Yeah.
So it's trust. It really is about trust and just allowing the journey to unfold in the way it needs to.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I do have a question about, speaking of having hard times and wanting to quit and knowing that really you didn't mean it. But can you share an experience, or however many you want, with us about one of those moments that you were like, that's it, I'm done, I can't do this? Because I'm pretty sure that through that moment, or several of these, I would imagine that you learned something that you really needed to learn within your mediumship, being teaching or just being the medium you are. Do you have some times that you can think of that you're like, "Oh my gosh, that was horrible for me," or it felt like it in the moment?
I think really it's these moments. It's not normally of something necessarily like a particular thing happening. It's more moments where, you know, when you when we often say, okay, we're going on this personal spiritual journey, we think that it comes to an end at some point, but it's a lifelong journey. There has to be, especially for the medium, a constant engagement with the self. I still meditate regularly. I still contemplate, reflect upon things, journal. I'm very much still keeping in touch, understanding my emotions that are constantly changing as I'm experiencing life. And of course, no one is immune from the hardships that just situations that are beyond your control. So quite often it's when you're going through very difficult sets of circumstances within your own everyday life that obviously affects the mediumistic expression. And this is something, again, we have to look at. If I'm in deep grief and I'm overwhelmed emotionally, that will affect my mediumistic expression. Okay. And so often when you're going through, can work in one in two ways. Sometimes the best work I've ever done is when I'm at my lowest ebb, because my soul needs that experience and that relationship with the spirit world. My soul's searching for that. And so I can sometimes surrender even more, because the mediumship becomes a respite from what I'm going through in my own life. But other times, if I'm in a state of distress within myself, it can then bleed into my work. It can affect the quality of the work and the expression that I'm trying to do, which then just compounds the difficulties that you're going through in life then. Because not only now is your life difficult, your mediumship's becoming difficult too. And I think it's that combination of just the difficulties of life that you're a little bit like children throwing a tantrum and throwing all the toys out the pram. What I found is that in life, not just in life, you take out the work, you take out your frustrations on the things and the people that you love the most.
Yeah.
My mom was always the number one target when I was frustrated. I'd take it out on her because I loved her the most. And also because I knew she was strong enough to take it, and she wouldn't forsake me in those moments. She would always be there. The same with my mediumship. I have a genuine love for my work and that relationship with the spirit world, but it also means as you build that trust with the spirit world, and you know that they're like your mom, really, they're not going to give up on you and turn their back on you. They can that the spirit world can often then, or those in the spirit world that are working with you, can often become the target of your frustrations, as can the mediumship itself. So I think often when I say I want to give up, it's just a way of me trying to offload my frustrations in life, and I take it out on the things and the people that I love the most, which is a really odd way of living life. But I think it's what most of us do. And then, of course, as soon as you overcome, then you get back on the horse again, and you carry on as normal. But I also think it's important just to mention my relationship with the spirit world over the years. I have been angry with them sometimes. Why me? Why does this happen to me? I'm angry with God sometimes. I'm angry with myself sometimes. I'm angry with other people at times. And there's also moments of deep gratitude and love. The relationship with the spirit world that I have is very much like any other human relationship. We go through our highs and our lows together. And I'm sure when it comes to the spirit world, there's no need for the lows. It's just, as I said, the human part of myself taking it out on something that I know I can trust in and will listen to me and not be judgmental. I can't stress it enough in this talk. You've got to treat the spirit world and the people that work with you in the spirit world as the medium, as real living people, because that's what they are. They're not energies. They're not entities. They're not essences. They're real people. Not only those that you're working with on behalf of your recipients, the mums, dads, brothers, sisters that come, but it's really important to build a genuine friendship with those that are working with you in the spirit world for the betterment of your mediumship and your own spiritual life. And it sounds really strange. I don't say this to people that I don't understand, but my best friends that I have, I've never met physically. People that I trust the most, that I confide in the most, are those that have helped me for the last 20 years from the spirit world with my development. And I've built a genuine friendship with those people. It's not a friendship where I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you. It's not a friendship where I go down the pub and have a drink with them on a Saturday night. It's really not two-way conversation. It's me sending my thoughts and intentions to them for help and not expecting an immediate response, but knowing and trusting that influence is there. And of course, then certain spiritual experiences of being able to feel their presence in my life, in my daily life. And there's many times in a year where I feel the presence of those people that are working with me. But that's enough for me just to feel the presence. I don't need a conversation.
Yeah.
Just that constant presence is enough to know they're there. And I know those people as individuals by their presence. And that is probably also how they know me too. And that's a beautiful thing in itself.
Yeah, and just for clarification for those, especially Americans, I feel that most Americans are speaking about spirit guides. The way I've been taught is the team, and I actually prefer the word team because I don't really feel like they're dictating what it is that I should be doing with my life, but I have a relationship with this team and we work together, and I think that's what you're speaking to. Yeah, and I also feel that so many people want to have a name or they wanna know what they look like or that my guides are telling me and these kinds of things are being said, but the way that I've been taught, which I'm so grateful for, is that this is a team of real people, and these are the people that we are working with within our mediumship, and so it's up to us to develop this relationship with them that's not putting them on a pedestal or putting ourselves on a pedestal. It's really just understanding how we're working together. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that?
I think lots of people want to know what the names of their guides are or what they look like, but the guide present themselves in whatever way you find acceptable.
Hmm.
Well, Birch famously said, I'll be whoever you want me to be in terms of my physical appearance. Often when we see, for instance, people, First Nation people are often very, know, prolific guides, right? Like Silver Birch was a First Nation individual. It's often because those are archetypes that that we think of as being spiritual people. There's often people that come and think, like, I've had people say to me, like, Jesus is my guide. I think what's happened is that as you've become aware of the presence of your guide, it may be a healing presence.
Mm.
And as you're aware of that presence, it triggers a picture of Jesus in your mind because that is who you associate with healing. So it's just what you're seeing is not the reality of the guide. It's an image of a person or a particular nationality or a particular race or a particular icon that represents the quality of the presence that you're experiencing. So I don't really care if what they what they were in the past in terms of their persona or what they look like, because I recognize that what I'm going to become aware of within myself as I'm touching that presence is going to be what you'd probably call a clairvoyant picture, something that represents the quality of that particular guide and what they're bringing. You know, I remember when I was at university, I studied theology and philosophy and ethics. So I actually did a lot of work on church history. Theology was a big part of component and interest of mine, as well as church history. As I was going through my degree, I was aware when I was sitting quietly of a new influence, a new guide.
Hmm.
Eh, I was at a seminar with a colleague and we did an exercise for the students about meeting the guides, and they were leading the exercise. So I just sat there and did it myself. And I was aware of a cardinal, a Catholic cardinal. And after the exercise, my colleague said, "Oh, I was aware of a cardinal with you." I was like, "Oh, me too." Yeah, it was confirmation, but it's not an actual cardinal from the spirit world. It's the influence of, can be church of spiritual leadership. It can be an influence of the leader of the team, maybe. It can also be an influence in my philosophy, a guy that's working with me with philosophy and theology or history, the qualities that I was actually trying to express within my own life. And that was the perfect image for me to accept and understand those qualities because that's what I was focusing on in my life too. So for me, like I said, it's not about knowing what their names are, what they look like. It's about recognizing the presence of them and the quality that they're bringing from the spirit world into my life and the influence they're having on my development. That's what's important. Focus
Absolutely.
focus on.
Andy, I know that you do a lot of things that are just donation based. I feel like I've read a lot of things like that. You also do what you call spirit talks, where you are, I think, specifically speaking to mediums. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so Spirit Talk is, I've done this now for about 7 or 8 years, and it's been going for 7 or 8 years. It's really a free lecture series. We have every year I give a list of talk topics. Some of them are on mediumistic, a lot of them are on mediumistic development, lots of them are on philosophy, lots of them are on personal development. We also run I run a mediumship clinic, which is really just a question and answer session particularly about mediumistic development, all of which are completely free to join. I have lots of student mediums, working mediums that come to those things, but also lots of general public that are just interested in the subject and want to learn more. Yeah. And
And how can they find that? That's through your website?
go to my website, www.andybyng.com, and you'll see the spirit on the homepage. There's a Spirit Talk link. If you just register once, you just fill out the forms, you get added to the Spirit Talk mailing list, and then you get, every time there's a talk, you get a reminder and an invitation with the joining instructions via Zoom, and then you just log on, and then you can join the Spirit Talk app, which you'll get linked to, and then you get 12 months worth of lectures which you can watch it whenever you want to watch them, and it's all completely free. It's my way of just trying to educate and bring some education to people that perhaps can't afford that education or need extra education that they can't afford. So that's one of the ways that I try and give back and help.
Yeah, the ultimate service. That's beautiful. And also, I saw that you have an upcoming progressive coming up for those of you that are Americans. That means a year-long training for mediumship. Is that correct? Yep, coming up in 2024.
That starts in January, but it's there's now just a waiting list that's full now. The progressive group for 2020 is full, but there is a waiting list so if people want to join the waiting list, then they're more than welcome to. And if you go to my website again and look at mentorship, all the details of the progressive group are on there. It's actually there's over 100 sessions in a year. So we do a lot of work. It's like a weekly, there's 3 4-day seminars over the year. Then there's tutorials, practice sessions, personal development classes. It's quite a comprehensive program of study, really trying to give a rounded education to mediums. And really it's open to any level of experience. So we have different groups for different levels of experience. So we'll find you a group that marries to the level of experience that you have.
Wonderful. So it's www.andybyng.com if you want to find Andy. Also on Facebook under Andy Byng. And lastly, I felt that I saw that you had a free demonstration or a demonstration of some kind coming up all over Canada. Is that correct? Is that still happening? Yeah.
Well, I'm doing a national theatre tour called Between Two Worlds, which is visiting every province in Canada over the next 12 months. So we've already done Alberta, and we're 3/4 of the way through the Ontario leg 2. We've got the other 5 provinces to go to. I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, in November, I did a demonstration in St. Catharines, which is just like by Niagara Falls. And that event was recorded. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be live streaming the recording of that event in December, which is completely free to watch. You can also download a link to the recording of that demonstration, which again is completely free. The only thing that I am asking, and again, is people can make donations when you download the evening. You can make a donation from 0 to whatever amount that you want to, and all of the money that will be raised from those donations is going to a charity called Toys for Tots, which is a Canadian-based charity that provides Christmas presents, not just Christmas presents for children, for any major religious or secular holiday. So it can be Christmas, Diwali, it could be Eid, whatever whatever holiday it needs to be. And they also give children toys that have just come from perhaps just gone into social care that may not have toys available. So it's a really great charity that really provides kids with toys that otherwise wouldn't have them. So all the money raised from downloading, and there'll also be links on the live stream that you can donate during the live stream too, will all be going to that charity, 100% of it. So the download is my Christmas present to you guys, and then I hope you'll pay it forward and donate some money to give that money to the kids for Christmas. So hopefully that works out well.
Absolutely. And that's found on your website. Is that correct?
It will be on my website. It will also be all over Facebook and YouTube, and we'll be using StreamYard to live stream it across multiple platforms. I can always send you the link to that. So you can put it, hopefully might be able to put it in the comment section or in the blurb of the podcast, and then people can look at it that way. That's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Andy, for taking this time. It's just been a real pleasure and an honor to see you again after all of these years and be the one that's interviewing you. So thank you so much.
Been fantastic to see you grow as a person and as a medium. So keep up the good work. All the best for the future, and thanks for the invitation. Anytime
Thank you.
want me back, I'll be more than welcome to do. Just come.
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you, Andy.
Bye.